All right. So welcome back, everyone, to another interviews from the Meerwald from the Bayshore Center 5 Valve. I'm Brian Keenan, the executive director, and we're joined again today with Garett Eisele from Clark and Eisele. And for those of you who listened to our last series, we got to hear a little bit about Garett and his, what a shipwright is and how he got into being a shipwright. Today, Garett's going to start what I hope will be a series of conversations over the next year or so about the second restoration of the Meerwald, and which is pretty exciting to us at the Bayshore Center. For those of you who don't know, we've been working on the second restoration now for 2 years. It started a couple of years ago when we got a new engine for the boat, and we did some other mechanical work. And we knew that the decks, after 25 years of having over 100,000 passengers on the boat, needed some work, and along with other parts of the boat, while it had been pretty well maintained over the last 25 years, even things that are super well maintained need to be replaced and fixed. So through just by chance, we put a Facebook post out there looking for a shipwright to come help us with the boat, and 2 crazy guys from Maine said, yeah, we'll come and help, and kind of remind me of Ben and Jerry of the shipwright world. I don't know which one's Ben or which one's Jerry, but so Garett, thanks so much for taking the time again to speak with us. And so tell us a little bit about the Meerwald and the second restoration.
Yeah. Well, geez, where should I begin?
Well, I guess really sort of, what does she need? What's the big picture piece of what she needs, and where does she stand physically now, and what needs to get done?
Yeah. So, how would you say she's 92 now?
She's 92.
Yeah. So, essentially, she was made into a brand new boat in the 90s restoration, and so really we're looking at. She's 92. Well, she's not a brand new boat. There's a lot of things we've taken to maintain original fabric, but as far as her maintenance needs and her condition, she was returned to like new condition, functional condition. And over those, what's that, 20, 30, like 25 years, 24 years since then?
Yeah.
Since the restoration. These wooden boats, wood as a material is really variable in its durability, but specifically, any wood that is left out to weather in water and heat and sun decays over time, and that's just a fact. That's not anybody's fault. And actually, what's equally important are the fasteners that hold that stuff together. She's all held together with galvanized mild steel and a bunch of stainless steel as well. And those things also have a lifeline, a life limit. So where she's at now is that essentially the way that these boats tend to fail is it's not the part that's down in the water that will rot, especially if you're in northern waters. You guys are at the very limit because much further south and where you are, there are shipworm in the water and gribbles and a couple of other marine borers that can get in and do some real damage. Meerwald doesn't have a lot of symptoms of that. There's a couple tornado wormholes here and there that were really caught early, I think, and are no biggie. So everything below the water line, which is just any part of the boat that's below the surface of the water, is in pretty darn good shape. And the reason for that is that when wood is submerged in water, it actually is a more anaerobic there's less oxygen, which is one of the major things that rot, which is a fungus, needs to grow to consume the actual lignin in the wood. So, above the water line, however, and that's below the water line, it's also salt water, and salt water is antifungal by nature. Like salt is a very caustic substance to the funguses that eat wood. So there can be problems below the water line, but the Meerwald doesn't have them. Above the water line, what happens is that you have fresh water and sun, and the way that the Meerwald is made watertight is that her decks are a bunch of planks next to each other that need to be swollen up to keep tight. And so they'll expand and contract and expand and contract. And over time, they get a little more loose. And then like some rainwater can get caught, and rainwater will work its way down in these little cracks and sit there in the shade where it'll stay moist and not dry out entirely, killing any fungus. So that's like exactly the kind of environment where dry rot likes to exist. So that's what's happened on the Meerwald, is that you know, these little tiny cracks and things in the boat, they suck water in and fresh water, and they eventually, you know, just by nature of how wood works, they get old and rot. So that's kind of where she's at now. So you can think of it as if she has a great foundation, but she needs a new roof, essentially. So what we're going to do, or what we're planning to do, is to from the deck level up, we are going to renew the boat. So that means all the rails, all the deck planking, and all the cabin houses or the structures on deck are going to be completely brand new. But that's actually a separate structural component than the hull is. And so our proposal is to do the top of the boat and make that brand new, so that we can protect everything from those freshwater leaks dripping down. Because that's really how these boats die, is when you get enough water, you know, a persistent leak starts to happen in one spot, and rainwater will drip down and it will rot, and the grain of the timber will draw that fungus down along its length, and it can spread through the boat in that way. So.
But things like the masts and the wheel and all that other stuff, that will remain. We're talking about the wood part of the boat.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The whole rig is another separate structural component of the boat, just as the hull is, and so that's going to be left alone. The spars are older, and we looked those over, and you know, old doesn't mean bad. There's nothing wrong with old stuff. It's just a matter of whether or not it actually has decayed somewhere, and the rig looks great.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So so you had me buy a whole bunch of wood.
Yeah.
And
There's
I don't think I
too.
appreciated you know, I mean, this is not a simple process, right? It's not like we're going to show up in Maine, you're going to run to Home Depot, buy some wood, and restore the boat. So we had to start with, you know, you guys did a pretty big survey of the boat. You looked her over a couple of times. We made up a scope of work. We got a grant from the state of New Jersey. We're fundraising actively for it now. So anyone listening wants to donate, we could still use resources to pay for this second restoration. But tell us this first part of just sourcing the wood and drying the wood.
Yeah. So lumber that's used in boats, wood as a structural material, a building material, is really complicated because it comes from an organic source, and the wood wasn't meant to be a boat building material. It was meant to be a tree. So it'll behave in ways that you don't really want sometimes. And we have to be a little bit clever about anticipating those and mitigating them. So what happens is the wood needs to be air dried to a certain point, depending on what part of the boat it is. There's certain areas where it doesn't matter if the wood's dried or not. But in the case of the deck and all the structures on deck, they definitely do need to be fully dried. And so what you do when a flat piece of wood dries, you've got annular growth rings in that piece of wood, and as it dries, those growth rings tend to want to straighten out, and they'll cut. Mm-hmm. And the outside of the plank, or the outside of the piece of wood itself, will dry faster than the inside. And when wood shrinks, or when wood dries, it shrinks. So the outside will form cracks because it doesn't have anywhere to go. It's you know, the inside's wet, the outside's dry, the outside shrank, the inside didn't. So you get checks, they're called. So what you do is you let the wood dry and do all that stuff first, and then you make it all straight and smooth and take all the defects out of it and make it what you want it to be. So we've been crawling around New England, making phone calls to you know, nobody cuts white oak commercially anymore. Not for what we're doing anyway. And furthermore, the quality and the specificity of the cuts that we're asking for require a custom miller who's willing to put up with somebody as fussy as a boat builder, which is very rare. And then furthermore, another challenge in finding that wood is that nobody cuts wood as long as we need it to be. some of the lengths of the wood that we're looking for are 24 feet long, which are extremely unusual in the timber industry. Like a lot of loggers won't even cut. You have to even get to the logger before they get to the sawyers to cut the tree long enough, because the industry standard is to cut them to 16 or less. So yeah, so we have a couple of sources, and it's just a matter of getting a list and having a couple years of lead time, and trying to get it as fast as you can and letting it dry. And basically, to dry this stuff out, most of the wood that we're going to be using for this part of the restoration is 2 inches thick, and that stuff's going to be the rule of thumb is that oak takes about a year per inch to dry, so 2 years to dry. And
wow.
Yeah. Yep. So we've just about squeaked that in, and like that's very much a rule of thumb. You know, it's not a dead set thing, but that's what you need to be fully air dried. You know, quote unquote. So.
And the oak was just part of it, right? Because we had oak and then cedar and.
Yep. So there's different species of wood are used for different applications. Oak was used really commonly for structural members on double sawn wooden boats up and down the coast, and the Meerwald's no exception. All of her frames, her ribs are white oak. A lot of her deck structure, so white oak is heavy and it's strong, but that's not always what you want. So up high on a sailboat, you want lighter stuff, and so because the more weight you have down low, the more resistance you have to tipping over. So it behooves you to make your deck lighter. And furthermore, a lot of softwoods, like softwoods mean like a pine or cedar, like conifers, basically, are very good at, they're lighter trees. And they're much better at swelling up. They're softer and they swell up, they suck wood up. So they make really good decking, because the principle that you're using to make the deck of the boat watertight is putting these dry pieces of wood next to each other, and then when they get wet in the rain or by spray or whatever gets them wet, they swell against each other and they crush really hard. And any imperfections in their fit get crushed out of them, and they're wicked tight. So that's the other species that we're using here is Alaskan yellow cedar,
and that'll be on the deck itself.
That'll be on the deck. Yep.
Now there's some. We went round and round. The boat is historic, and there's, it's touchy, right? It's harder. It's not like you're just going to rip everything out and throw it away, even though parts of this need to be ripped out and thrown away and replaced. And I like the idea that the analogy someone gave to me was, the boat is sort of like the human body. The Meerwald's like the human body. The cells reproduce, and as you grow and change, that's the same thing with the Meerwald. It's a historic boat. There's a lot of new elements to it, but it's just sort of repair and growth over time. The main cabin of the boat is original, we think, to 1928. It's really quite beautiful. What are you going to be doing in there, and how are you going to work to ensure we keep as much historic character as possible?
Yeah, so that's one of the very last pieces of the boat that is actually original. So we spent a lot of time with you and with, could you remind me his name? The Historic Trust.
Oh, Glenn Sapona from New Jersey Historic Commission. Yep.
Yeah, you and Glenn came down and we looked it over, and when there's a difference between trying to fix a boat just to fix it and then trying to fix a boat to maintain its original fabric and character. And Tim and I really scratched our heads over how to save as much of that cabin house as much as we could. And what we're going to do is we're going to be able to replace individual beams, deck beams in the overhead, that only the ones that need to be replaced, and we'll save the ones that we're able to. And we're able to we're able to get some Atlantic white cedar milled, which is the species that is very difficult to come by, and the dimensions that are used for that. We were able to find some really high quality stuff to match the original species, and we'll be even doing all the way down to like color matching with stain.
Because that was not an insignificant issue from a visual standpoint, because the concern I remember was, if we used a different species or even the same species, but that the color match could actually be pretty garish and pretty, it would look like somebody put something new into, and while we're not trying to make it look old, we want to be respectful and have a cohesive look to it.
Yeah, exactly. So we're not trying to fake it we're not trying to make you believe that it's original, but we are trying to not distract from the original stuff. So the idea is to highlight the original fabric that you're able to save. And we're even going to take all the paneling off and label every single piece and then re-stick it back in once we rebuild.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's quite a jigsaw puzzle, but I think we can do it fairly efficiently.
The whole process to me is fascinating because it's pretty complex. I mean, from, just scheduling the work from, when are we going to leave bivalve so the weather's still good so we could sail the boat to Maine? We're going to arrive into Belfast, and then the boat will be taken out of the water on a lift and brought over into the yard, correct?
Yeah, so we'll be hauling the boat at Front Street Shipyard in Belfast, and they have a giant machine that can just lift it right out of the water, and they'll drop it down on a massive trailer by this company called Brownell Systems, and they specialize in moving really, really, really big boats, and they actually invented the jack stand, the stands that they use to hold boats up everywhere nowadays. That's kind of a modern invention, but anyway. They're a pretty neat company. They'll come up with 3 tractor trailers from Massachusetts, and they'll have a big trailer that they stack up on one tractor trailer, and they assemble it all into a giant trailer, and they pull it with winches from 3 of these big tractor trailers. Yeah, it's quite interesting. And to make turns, they jack it up and turn the wheels, and then put it back down, and they'll move a little bit, and then jack it up and turn the wheels and move it down. And we will have a temporary shelter already built that they'll back the boat right into, and then we'll build the gable wall on it and shrink wrap the whole thing in, and we'll just use it. We'll do the project from a shrink wrap building on some property that we lease from the city of Belfast.
It's a pretty cool shipyard. I was there once, and I believe there's a public walking path through the yard or adjacent to the yard, and I remember seeing a tugboat out of the water there in dry dock, and thinking, my God, it's really like an iceberg, right? There was this giant bottom of the tugboat, this little tiny top that was red, but just cool how visual that whole place is. So the boat gets hauled out there. She's put into a shelter, and that's when you're going to get your chainsaw, and I'll be having a small heart attack watching you rip apart the boat.
Yeah. So basically, and I forgot to mention, we'll pull the masts out as well.
Right.
So we'll pull all the masts out. We'll probably pull the rudder out, and a couple other things will get craned out that are convenient. But basically, we'll have a crew of 5 to 6 shipwrights under our direction with chainsaws and crowbars and sledgehammers. And it's really nice because the way that we've planned this project, it's all a part of the healing process. The way that we plan this project is that we know the scope of work. We spent, as you recall, like 2.5 weeks sleeping in the museum during COVID to figure out what our exact thing we're doing was, so that we can get the boat up, miss as little of her season by just doing this whole project one winter, send her back down.
And that was after 2 years of working on the boat. So it was 2 years and 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's been a pretty massive planning project. So I'm really looking forward to actually not having to plan on the fly and just be like, all right, what's the next thing we're doing?
Right.
So we'll be able to go in there and just demo everything that needs to be demoed right away. We'll stage the whole boat with a bunch of staging. We'll bring a bunch of giant woodworking machine tools. We've got a big 30-inch bandsaw and a big 24-inch planer and a couple of other antique woodworking machine tools that we use. And we'll just put them right inside the tent with us and put on some warm clothes and deal with January and February in Maine. But that's the most of it. And the wood, it's go ahead.
We looked, and we certainly talked to you, extensively about doing this work in New Jersey as opposed to doing it to Maine. And, I'm sure some of our viewers are asking, why are you bringing the boat to Maine? Why aren't you doing it here in New Jersey? And I think from seeing the boatyard, it was sort of the aha moment for me, is that, this is a trade, this, shipwright work is not a completely lost art in New Jersey. There are certainly people out there that are still doing this work, but not at the scale that you're talking about. And the ability to pull together the equipment and the talent and the materials uh, into one place to get this all done in the time frame and the price that we could afford, it was really, a simpler, more affordable project to bring the boat to where the talent and the materials were,
Mhm.
as opposed to bringing all of that, down to the Bayshore Center to try to get the work done. And so I know, I want to be sensitive to people that we're not just willy nilly, not doing the work in New Jersey because we don't want to. It was actually our first desire to do the work in New Jersey, and it was begrudgingly at the end of the day. The numbers and the schedule just didn't work to have her restored here. So the talent, that you're talking about, these 5 or 7 shipwrights, you guys are ripping the boat apart. You're having all this fun. The owner who's writing the checks is having heart attacks about the boat. Um, what's the time frame do you think that you'll be able to get from start to finish?
Yeah, I think we were looking at the your September 15th arrival, I think.
Yep.
And so that'll be it'll be 2 weeks on the dock with your crew down rigging the boat. AJ Meerwald's very good at down rigging and up rigging the schooner, so that's going to be left to you guys. And we'll get all the sails off the boat. We'll pull every cushion off the boat. The whole galley has to get pulled out. Everything that you can pick up and walk away with is going to have to go off to a storage unit somewhere. And then about 2 weeks to do that, get the mast out and put her in the building. Demo is going to take about a month or two. And then we're going to roll right into just putting everything back. And that's going to take us probably until, I think our drop dead date was June 1st. So that's, like you said, 6 to 9 months is the time frame. And
And it's really a jigsaw. It's like you said, it's a jigsaw. You'll be cutting these pieces, piece by piece and putting them in place. It's pretty time consuming.
Yeah. Every single bit of it is I mean, that's why they don't build wooden boats like this anymore. It's extremely labor intensive, and high skill also is really necessary to do all of it. You can't, the baseline to getting somebody from not knowing how to do this to knowing how to make hull plank is a mountain of learning. It's just a lot. So.
And then, the other talent that's up your way is Nat Wilson, sail maker, and he's currently repairing our Maine sail. But when the boat's in Maine and next year, he'll be working to make us an entire new sail. And that's a complicated process. I thought it would just be take the measurements of what we have and reuse it. But we're gonna have to work with you and the Coast Guard to create a stability, have a stability test done to ensure that the sails are the correct size so that the boat doesn't capsize. Tell us a little bit about that process, and when does that come into play?
Yeah. So the Coast Guard requires the U.S. Coast Guard will have an inspector on site every week or two as we're doing this process, and it'll either be Inspector Glass or Inspector Garett from Coast Guard Sector Belfast. And they're both great guys. You work with them both. They're really reasonable, and they understand that we're doing a good job and are kind of there to help us out. Honestly, it's been really great. So what they'll do is they want to make sure that the boat's safe, and they want to make sure the work that's done is good. And when you take a boat apart like this, all the wood that you throw away is weight taken away. And when you put it all back together, you've got a new weight added. And if you replace everything the same, it should be pretty close, but there's a difference in weight with wood species and all of this stuff and moisture content. And it's easy. Basically, we've been asked to do another simple stability test. And the way you do that is you put a bunch of barrels on deck and fill them up with water, and you measure the weight of the barrel. You know the weight of the barrel because you know the volume of water, and you know the distance it is from the center line, and you measure how much the boat heels, and from that you can calculate your stability curve. I don't know how to do that. A marine architect would know how to do that. But that's what we'll have to do. So after the restoration, we'll be able to reconsider her stability and look at what size mainsail you could put back on. Obviously, I'm rooting really hard for keeping her original sail plan size, and I think we should be able to do that with either adding ballast or something else to make that happen. I hope
Yeah, it'd be silly if she had a really small main sail. But we
And
do
we've
have,
got-
there is a new engine on the boat, which I'm sure is significantly lighter than the engine that was originally installed.
Right.
But to the point of our earlier conversation, the complexity of this work it's kind of mind blowing. Just
Yeah.
just the transporting of the boat to the yard, to building the shed that she's going to be in, to delivering the wood, to getting the talent there, to cutting the wood to the right size. And I just tried to put up crown molding, and no matter what I did, I cut it in the wrong direction each time, no matter how hard I tried. And I thought of you guys, because you have to think backwards on cutting that. But I
Yeah.
look forward to seeing her, the work being done. I think it'll be fun for me certainly, and for our viewers watching this. I hope to come up there on a regular basis to be able to have conversations with you and Tim, your business partner, to see firsthand the work that's happening and the work that you guys are doing. Hopefully COVID will be over by then, and we'll actually be able to be in the same place at the same time, because then I think it'll be real to me and to everyone else. And the Meerwald is a really prized possession for the people in the state of New Jersey. It's something they really do love, and I know there's a bit of an angst for them to have her taken out of state, to have some northerners work on this boat, and to find out it's not even a guy from Maine, but a guy from Michigan is working on the boat. Gives them some angst. But I do want to thank you and Tim for the hard work that you guys have done over the last 2 years. For our viewers, this past spring, in addition to COVID, our rudder on the boat broke. I'm using terribly bad maritime terms, but at the last minute, literally at the last minute, Garett drove all night long to show up at the Bayshore Center the next morning, and spent 2 weeks working on the boat to ensure that we can start our sailing season. And we really appreciate that. And we appreciate the care that you and Tim have, and the passion you have for this boat. And we're grateful that we found you. And we look forward to joining you in person. Maybe you could play a song for us when we're up there on your guitar, and we could hear some sea shanties, which apparently are huge on TikTok now. And we can actually, apparently huge on TikTok. And we're going to do a rendezvous with a couple of other Delaware Bay, Morris River schooners, hopefully, who are H.J. Riggins. Is that right?
I'm having a brain fart. J&E Reagan.
Oh, J&E
Reagan.
Riggins.
Yeah. Boyd and Shepherd is the other one. Yeah, they're both built in the Morris River, and the J&E Reagan's actually built in the same yard, and I believe was the same design. She's almost the same hull as the Meerwald. Very similar. 1 year difference. So
we're excited to see our friend
Yeah.
there. So Garett, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today. And I look forward to being up in Maine. I actually think early next month to pick up this sail, and maybe we could do another chat then.
Yeah, sounds great.
Great. Thanks very much, Garett. Take care.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.